Well, good afternoon. My name is Andy Trainor. I'm the Chief Learning Officer for the Walmart US business. And I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you a little bit about what Walmart is doing in the credentialing and badging space related to employers. So I think the first thing I wanted to talk about was, why is this important to Walmart? Why are we working on this? And, one of the things that we spend a lot of time on is trying to understand the skills that people have attained, whether it's through work, whether it's through education, whether it's within our company or in other companies. And so what credentialing and badging allows us to do is have a better visibility to what that is and where they got it. It also is really a really different time, even prior to COVID, but COVID has made this even more prominent, is that the skills needed to do a job are changing faster than ever. And so the time that you need to reskill yourself within your career, we estimate is probably 8 times a year, or 8 times in your career, you're going to have to reskill to continue to be relevant in the workplace. And because of that, you don't have time to get another 4-year degree every time you do that. So these skills and a way to identify and recognize these skills becomes more and more important as you continue to grow your career throughout. It also is, how do you use them to broaden what you can do within the existing workplace? So skills you earn in one role might be valuable in another, and this allows us to see that and transfer it from place to place. The other aspect that's really important for us is the interoperability of those skills. So as you start to bring people in from different companies, different industries, or if people that work for us want to go somewhere else, how do you make sure they don't have to retake training and relearn things that they already know and give them credit for what they've already done? So that's a little bit of what we're trying to do around badging and credentialing, is really recognize the skills associates have, new or existing, and then be able to share those across our business and then share them outside if the need comes that the associates choose to go do something else. So really, let's talk a little bit about the interoperability of the skills. So last year, we got the pleasure of working with the White House related to the American Workforce Advisory Board. So Doug McMillan, our CEO, is part of this American Workforce Advisory Board. And in that process of working with that group, it was determined that we really needed to understand, how do we recognize skills that employees have and almost create a learning record similar to a health record for employees that they can take with them and choose to share around the country as they go from job to job. So part of this work we did was work with several different companies, several different industries, education, tech, retail, and really start to work through, what does interoperability mean and how would you do that? And so in this test, Walmart, part of our pilot was, how do we try to create these badges, give them to the associates, and then allow them to share across different industries. So we really had 4 buckets that we focused on within this pilot with the White House. And we focused the work with WGU, IBM, Workday, LinkedIn, and then Concentric Sky. We used their Badgr program to create the badges. So you think about, the first step we had to do was, how do you map skills to the work or to training? And so we created these roles, within 28 roles within our company, that was the frontline associates in the stores, and what skills did it require to do those jobs. And then once we mapped out those skills, we were able to badge against them. So it was really clear that to be a cashier, for example, here are the skills you need, and those skills you earn badges. Once you have a badge, those skills start to map to other roles. So if you earn a cashier badge in, let's say, customer service, that same badge could be used in the self-checkout area or in financial services, because customer service is a key skill you need there. So we linked those across the company so associates could see skills I earned in this job are relevant in other jobs, and they have a clear visibility to where they wanted to go. So in this pilot, we did those 28 roles. We were able to badge against 16 badges across 85 skills. We piloted in 90 stores. Our plan is to continue to roll. COVID delayed a little bit of our plans from a rollout perspective, but we're on track now. By Q2, Q3 of this year, we'll be in all stores with this type of pilot. So then our next step was, how do you use it? So we created an app, that the associates get their learning in, they develop the training within it, they complete the training, they get the badge, and now they're able to share that badge. So we partnered with Workday to take those badges, export them from our LMS system into Workday. So now the associates in their Workday account could see the badges they earned and clearly understand what skills those badges required. Then we were able to work with LinkedIn. So now from your Workday account, the associate could choose to share LinkedIn those badges and really promote themselves and say without a doubt that, hey, I really earned this skill because here's the process we went through to validate that the associates got those skills. Now, it's the associate's choice if they want to share it or not. But what this allowed us to do was really prove out that it is possible to take work from a retail company, share it into a badging software, move it into a tech software like Workday that's an HR system, and then allow the associate to choose or not to choose to share that with others to let them know that they've earned these skills within their place of work or education. So really excited about the work. Obviously, there's lots more to do to make this really spread across the United States. We're continuing to work with different groups to try to figure out how do you create an independent governing body that would manage the skills autonomy so that everyone uses the same skills for the same job and the same validation for those skills. And then we all can be sure that when someone says they're an expert cake decorator and they're badged through this process, that we all know that they actually do have those skills and we don't have to retrain them as they go through, move their career to different places. So one of the key things we realized as we were working through this was in order to make sure that the credentials are transferable, it was really important to align to the Open Skill Stack standard using rich skill descriptors to make sure that we were using consistent building of what's in the badges, what the badges mean, what the technology stack looks like. And the framework we used was the Open Badge standard. So really important as you start to think through how you're going to build badges, what skills you're going to use, how those skills stack up to a credential, and what information is passed along with those badges and credentials. It's really important that you align to a common system, a common infrastructure to make sure that the information that's passed is consistent with all the other different methods that are being developed, so we can share them across industry. Because the goal here would be that not just for Walmart, but we would want everybody to use the same standards so we can all map back together and all benefit from the positives that come with credentialing and badging. Oops. So what is Walmart doing? So let me go into a little bit more detail exactly of what we're doing and how we got to where we are today. So the main point around building badges is you have to change the way you view job descriptions. Historically, we have taken job descriptions and it's been very specific on the tasks you do for the job. What's really important is you break that out to what skills are required for the job, because that's how you map across and build and map them together so you understand what job equals another job and what skills are transferable. So we had to go back and really look at every job description that we had and build out what skills are required for that job and then start to map the skills across. Where we started was something we called the foundational badge. So what is it that we expect every single associate at Walmart to know, regardless of the level, regardless of where you work? And that's really our core belief. So you look at the bottom, we've got our purpose, then we've got our values. Those things, everybody is the same. And so that's where you start, is what skills are required to meet our purpose and our values. And then we move to what are the desired leadership behaviors that exist within Walmart, and what skills are those. So again, always going back to what are the skills we need them to learn and earn and mirror as they move throughout their career. So we built a foundational badge based on these skills. Now that foundational badge could change based on level or location. So a store associate, the purpose and the values will be the same no matter where you work. but the desired leadership behaviors could be slightly different if you work in a store versus the home office versus a distribution center. So the further you move up the ladder, the less consistent or the more differences there are in the skills needed for those different roles. So once we built this foundational badge, then you start to move into the actual specific roles within the different areas. And so you can see in the orange, this is the common skills applicable to all the roles in a job family. You think about everybody in bakery, they all need food safety. Everyone on front end needs customer service. And so these core skills based on the area of the business you work in, you have to build, again, looking at job descriptions, what skills do you need? And then you have to build your training to ensure that those skills are highlighted within that training. And then once you have the job family group skill, then you move out to the functional skills. So if you're in bakery, if you're a cake decorator, you need to know a little bit more than if you're a meat cutter, and so on and so on. So you slowly build up to get more specificity based on the functional skill that you need within that role. And I think it's really important also to call out, it was really important for us to understand how do you ensure that this isn't being pencil whipped, so to speak? How do you ensure that someone goes to the training but they really do have the skills? Because a lot of what we do in this, some of it is face to face, but a lot of it is virtual or through an app, self-paced learning. And so a couple of things that we did was, one, there's assessments, obviously, that as you go through the different learnings, you have to pass quizzes, assessments that revalidate that you understand the knowledge. And then at certain key points, whether it's a skill or to get the badge in the end, there's a validation process where your supervisor has to log in and validate and physically watch you do a certain skill or a task and say, yes, this person can do this job. And I, Andy Trainor, am saying I validated them. So we attach the approver's name to the validation. So there's ownership on both sides, that if someone comes back later and can't do the job that we thought they could, and I validated them, then I should be able to explain why I validated them and what the difference between what they were doing before and what they're doing now is. Cake decorator is probably the best example I've got of how that works. So you can take all the content and read how to decorate a cake, but there's a skill to icing the cake. There's a skill to writing a name on the cake. There's a skill to roses. There's even a more advanced skill on creating a wedding cake. And so obviously there'll be assessments throughout the content, but at some point a supervisor has to validate that you know how to icing a cake. So that would make you basic cake decorator. Then when you can write names and do roses, that would make you intermediate. But you'd have to be validated again by a supervisor. And then wedding cakes would be, you're an expert cake decorator, and that would be a validation process as well, which means now you have an expert cake decorator badge. The same goes throughout the whole store, distribution center, or home office. The trick will be, you don't want to over-validate and over-assess where it takes so much time and it's so hard for the associates to get the badges. But you also need to put enough rigor in it where you feel comfortable that you can guarantee that associate has the skill you are badging them for. So obviously this is a huge undertaking for us. We've been working on it probably for the better part of a year, and we're continuing to refine what those skills are, especially the pace of change that's happening within the retail industry. So the skills needed are constantly being redone. So if you think about the bottom layer there, the blue layer, we talk about the purpose, values, and leadership behaviors. Those stay pretty consistent. The skills you need for a job group stay a little less consistent, but still pretty consistent. It's the skills you need, the functional skills you need for a job, that are constantly changing based on technology or the changing needs of the customer. So what are we going to use them for? I talked a little bit about this before. This opens up so many windows for the associates and for the company. Scheduling is a really, really easy example. If you're in a store, there are certain certain areas of the store that you have to have skills to work in, whether it's mixing paint, changing oil, changing tires, decorating cakes, running financial service counter, health and wellness roles, selling guns, checking out customers. There's all kinds of different skills needed for different roles. There is no consistent way to know today who can mix paint or cut fabric within a store. And so this allows us to badge against that. And so then we can use the scheduling system to say, hey, we have an opening tomorrow for someone to work in the fabric department that has to be able to cut fabric. So we can post and say, here's the people that we know are qualified that have a badge to cut fabric, and they can choose to take that shift if they want to or not. Same with mixing paint, same with cutting meat, working in produce, decorating a cake. So it allows us to make sure that we have the right people with the right skills in the right jobs to help serve the customer. But it also opens up a lot of windows for our associates to pick up different schedules based on their skills. So today, they may not know that they may be able to mix paint, but they may not know that there's an available schedule tomorrow in hardware. But with this system now, we'll know that, hey, these individuals can mix paint. We've got an opening, and let them choose to fill schedules as they want to, if they choose. The other one is career pathing. So the process we're using for this is really around once you create, there's certain gates you go through to get visibility to content and badging. So once you complete your foundational badge, then all the content you need for your role is visible. Once you complete all the content for your role, then the whole library opens up. And now you can see the training and skills required for every job in the store. And you can go take that training anytime you want to through your application. You call it the Academy app, but through the app. And so now associates have a very clear understanding of what skills are required for every job in the store, whether they have it or not, and what skills they've already earned in their current job that translates over to future jobs that they may want. And so they can go through and take as much content as they want, whenever they want, on the clock, obviously, and allow them to, one, understand what it takes to do these different jobs, but also help to pre-qualify them for roles if they become open. Now, they can only go so far. You can't do a validation in a role that you're not physically in, but you can do all the content and the assessments and get to that point. So if you want to be, as I mentioned, if you're a cashier and you want to be a cake decorator, you can take all the content, and then if a role opens up and you apply and get the role as cake decorator, now you just have to go through the validation process to prove that you can do it. And it also shows us high potentials as well. Like, associates that are really eager to grow in their career are going to take as much training content as they possibly can. And we'll have visibility to who's taking a whole bunch of content, who really is eager to learn, and just highlight those individuals that have high aspirations within the company and can help us point them in the right direction to help their career grow even more than they thought it could. Then the last piece is really around interoperability. And I mentioned that before, but how do you, in any organization, when you move from place to place, it's really hard to keep up with what skills you have and what training you've done. A lot of compliance stuff is tracked, obviously, so you know that. But if you move from a store in Florida to a store in Washington State, we may or may not know that you know how to decorate a cake. And you can say you do, but we don't have any record that says you were validated to be an expert cake decorator. It's more word of mouth and on the honor system. This allows us to say, hey, we know in Florida you were an expert cake decorator. We don't need to retrain you in this store. You've already got it. Keep going. Or if you came from another company, as we start to blow this out across the entire country, if you came from Kroger or Lowe's or wherever and you were a cashier, now we know that you're a validated cashier because you were badged and credentialed in it, and we don't need to waste time retraining you on how to be a cashier. We can focus on what's different between Lowe's and Walmart, but really that speed to proficiency goes drastically down because we're only training you on things that are new, not rehashing things that you already knew how to do. And then if you think about education, how do you, as you learn, if you're a project manager in a company and you've built distribution centers and you are clearly qualified as a project manager. So if we can badge and skill against that based on what you do in your work environment, why can't that translate to the educational system to say, hey, if this person can manage and successfully build $100 million distribution facility, they probably understand project management. And so what kind of credit can we give them based on the fact that these skills are validated through this credentialing system? And now you can get credit for work within education, or vice versa. If you've taken a project manager course in college and got credentialed against it, why can't we use that within the workplace to say, hey, you know how to be a project manager. I don't need to retrain you. Here's the roles that you can sign for or apply for. So really excited about what can happen and how you can share that across. When you think about military, the military does a great job of credentialing all the training that their soldiers get. We should be able to use that credentialing and bring them into Walmart and say, based on what you learned in the military, and here's what you were badged and credentialed against, we'll map that. We should be able to map that to our skills for our jobs and say, here's all the jobs you're qualified to perform based on your training in the military. And so the sooner we can do that, it opens up all these windows of opportunity, not only for employees, but for employers, because now you can get people to proficiency faster in this long period of time to get people ready for the job starts to dwindle as you grow. All right, so what are we doing next? So as I mentioned, we've been working on this quite a bit. We're doing lots of tests. One of the things I would say is it's significantly more complicated than we ever believed and understood. The deeper you get into the skills that you need for every job and then linking training to those skills, then linking those skills to other jobs, it's a monumental task. So I think the number one thing would be my recommendation, be very clear on the jobs. What skills does it take for every job, and how do those skills map to each other? That's the core of what you've got to go do. And then you can start to build badges against those skills and against those jobs, and then start to map them across. So we are currently piloting in a few super centers in neighborhood markets, so in some of our stores. Next week we'll move to the full store. So we've piloted the technology to make sure that all the hooks and links and communication works back and forth. And we've got all the jobs mapped, all the skills mapped. We're going to test it, the full store, here next week in several stores. And then quickly by Q2, start to roll out to all 5,000 stores and be done hopefully by Q3 timeframe. And then at the same time, we're doing it, we'll probably start in our supply chain business right toward the end of Q2, to where we would have all of our distribution centers and fulfillment centers on badging and credentialing, all of our stores. And then we'll have 1.5 million associates that are all getting badges and credentials based on the skills whether it's within the work or with the training they get, and they'll be linked together, which is a new thing for us as well, where now you understand the skills you earn in supply chain, how they apply to stores and vice versa. And then we'll move it to the home office and do the same thing. And then quickly after that, we'll begin to work with different companies to figure out how do we start to create this interoperability across different industries. So whether it's the U.S. Army, WGU, and educational systems, Workday, technologies, IBM, and start to really connect the dots to say, okay, now we've got it. Here's what we've done. Now let's go work together to figure out how we can help everybody get better, faster through it. So our vision of this is really exciting for us, because it's more about just what we do internally. This is really about a big play across the industry to help us employees, one, get credit for the skills they have, and be sure that those skills are validated and consistent across. And so creating this independent body that manages the skills and validation is really critical for us, that everybody agrees, uses the same definitions, the autonomy. and then we can spread that across and really start to save everybody time and help all the employees get jobs faster and help them advance their skills to keep up with the pace of the future. So really appreciate all the efforts that's been going into it. Really appreciate the time to talk, and I think I can open it up to questions now. I think I went.
Okay, great. Andy, there are a few questions, so I'm just going to read them in the order that they came in. So the first question, could you expand further on Walmart's vision for the learner employment record that appeared in an earlier slide? Would the LER be in the IMS format for comprehensive learner record?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes. That our view of the learning employment record is really around, it's got to be very easy entry for anybody. So it can't be expensive. The cost of entry has to be free or next to free, because you need everybody on it or it doesn't work, right? You need the mom and pop barbershop on the corner needs to have access to it and be able to use it. And any citizen in the United States, anybody, should be able to access this record and add skills to it. And so if it's expensive or costly or even costs anything, it really starts to diminish who can use it and who can. And so that's number one, is it's got to be almost free to the users. Now there may be another structure where the bigger companies or government or somebody funds it to make sure we can establish it. But if there's a cost to use it, they're going to limit who can use it, and that defeats the purpose of it. So that's number one. It's really important that it's the ease of entry for everybody. I think the format of it, I think what we've got to get to is, I think, yes, the IMS format for CLR is important and something we're using. But I think we've got to make sure that there's a way to map all those different formats together to one place, so it doesn't have to become a single, that they're all mapped to a common understanding, so you can go different routes if you want to. And that's actually the complicated part. I'm part of the Open Skills Network group, and that's part of what they're working with the Chamber of Commerce and other groups, is to try to understand, how do you build this structure out to where the format can be different across if you need it to be, but it all maps up to the same place, so we're all saying the same thing. Because it's really important that we all get to the same definition of what a project manager is or a cashier is and what those skills are. We may all call them different. We may all include different things in it, but it all has to map to one place so we can use it across the industry. Super simple.
Okay, the next question is how the focus on career skills and new tools have impacted your associates. Do you have any stories or data that you could share on that?
Yeah, several. I think about the push to digital for Walmart is huge, right? A year and a half ago, not many people were willing to pay to have something delivered to their house, right? It was easier and okay to go out to a store. The last year has proven that not to be the case anymore. And now that everyone's comfortable and enjoys the benefit of having things delivered to their house, that's going to continue to go on. So now as a retailer, we have customers that come into the physical store that want to buy it. We have customers that come to the store that want it put in their car. And we have customers who want us to deliver it to their front step. And then there's even another group of customers who want us to actually put it in their fridge for them, or their cupboard for them. And so as you think about how all that plays together, that drastically changes the roles of our associates in the stores. And so now, instead of just stocking shelves and helping customers find what they need, now a group of our associates are actually picking the product you want delivered to your house, and they're delivering it to your house. And so what this has allowed us to do is say, here's the skills you need for that, and very clearly train and focus on those skills so the associates can grow. Some of the best stories we have related to that is in one of the test stores we did, there was a young woman that was a cashier, which is our entry-level role, that wanted to be a picker. And online grocery picker, they pick the food items for the customers that order it. And so she did all the training through the app and got badged on how to be a picker. So when a position came open, she was an obvious choice to interview and hire because she was already understood the skills, had passed all the assessments. And so she was able to move a lot faster into the role because she used the platform that we had really learn and grow. And we've got countless stories like that where associates are learning things they wouldn't have had the opportunity to learn before to get ready for a job when it opens up versus after.
Okay, did I hear correctly that you are using badges as a source of truth, driving other business processes such as shift authorization? Or is the system of record your HRIS?
So that is our plan to do it. We are not doing it today, but that is the absolute plan, is that our system of record will still be the HRIS. But what we're saying is that based on the skills you have, that will be a requirement to work in certain areas. So if you don't have a paint mixing badge, you can't work in hardware. If you don't have a cake decorating badge, you can't work in bakery. And so they will use these badges to build the schedules to make sure we'll know what skills are needed for what areas. And that's the only associates that would show up when our leaders are building the schedules. But then also when there's openings because someone was sick or there's an open position, associates will be able to view what those open positions are and know which ones they're qualified to fill and take extra schedules and extra timing if they want to.
Okay, next question. Do you ever have any pilot programs for institutions giving credit for Walmart badges?
Pilot programs for institutions giving, not yet. We are working very closely with WGU to figure out how to do that from a credit for work perspective. We do get college credit for training they give today. So if you are an assistant manager in Walmart and you go through a training course, you get college credit through our Live Better You program, our online college program that we work with the Guild group. You do get college credit. Now we will badge that as we start to roll out. So the answer is we do it today. It's not badged yet. It will be badged here in the next 3 months. That will be. But upon completion of the training, you get college credit today through that. So you just use the badges for it. But we're also working with WGU and other institutions to do exactly that. That if we can prove that you've got the skill, you should get college credit for it. And it's already happening. Sure.
Okay, next question. Are you planning to build these cross-company credentialing as part of the educational institution-driven frameworks that we are seeing today? Or is this something that is forming as an employer-focused working group?
Whatever it takes. I think that's the answer. Is we understand that if Walmart owns it, not everyone will want to use it, and that's not our goal. We need everybody to want to use it and have input into it and participation taking from it. So I think what's really important for the educational institutions, though, is to understand that as you start to look forward, skills become really, really important. So degrees will always have a place, will always be important. But the skills you earn in those degrees becomes even more critical because we'll start to hire more based on skill than we will on degree. And so if we don't understand what skills you get for the specific degree, it will be very hard for us to determine if someone is qualified or not. So I think we got to work together, educational institutions and businesses, to really understand where we're going. Because, if you look in the future, the time it takes to get a bachelor's degree, the 4-year degree, when you start to when you finish, what's needed for that industry is going to be drastically different. And so if it's not based on skills, you could be considered irrelevant in 4 years because we don't know if the curriculum is kept up with the pace of change. And so I think that's why it's really important that we work together to figure out how to do it. And that's where I mentioned this independent body needs to be the owner and keeper of it, so that both business, industry, and educational institutions can have input and give and takes to make sure that this thing sticks across, because we all need it.
Okay, next question. How do you get the completely new jobs into the system that require, let's say, 90% of new skills not currently in Walmart's system, turned around and into the system? So if Walmart decided to start training people to be private pilot, how fast can you go?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So one of the things we were really beneficial about is for our field population, we've built an infrastructure. It was originally called the Academies, which is now the overarching Walmart Academies is our learning program. And we have, for the stores, we have 202 physical sites spread across the United States, geographically spread, where probably 80% of our 1.5 million associates could get to one and go home every day. There's no overnight travel required. And so because of that, we have facilitators that are dedicated facilitators that are in each of those sites, where we can train things. We can train all 1 million people in a week and a half, roughly, because we can get, and it can be consistent, and we send the exact same message at the exact same time. So we can bring 2 or 3 people from every store every day into the sites, and then they go back and cascade that training to their stores. So we know that the exact message we want is going out the exact same way at the exact same time every single time. So it has completely changed the pace of change that we can do. Now, obviously with COVID, we do it all virtual, so we can train even more because we don't lose any time with travel going back and forth. Sometimes it's as effective, sometimes it's not, depending on the topic, but we can go pretty fast. I think when you talk about something specific to like a pilot, obviously there's limitations to there's certain a length of time you have to do certain things. Think about food safety or health and wellness. There's different aspects of there's a certain amount of time you have to do certain things. But for us to create content, train the facilitators, and execute it in the store, I would say we could do all of that to every store, all of our associates, in probably 3 to 4 months, from start, build the content till every associate knows what to do. We could be done in probably 3 to 4 months.
Okay, do your badges have an expiration date? And if so, what went into your thinking on this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So some do, yes. So lots of different examples. So you would want associates to be sure they are getting refreshers on certain things, especially when it's skill-based. So if you think about, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. If you're a cashier, you probably don't need to refresh it if you're doing cashier every day. But if cashier is just a skill you have and you haven't run a register in 6 months, you probably need a refresher to make sure you still understand how to do that. So in that instance, it's time based on how long has it been since you've done the job. Another aspect would be, is there an annual refresher that's just required? So whether it's generated by compliance or legal reasons, and so then you would need to get revalidated once a year. And if you miss it, your badge gets suspended. It doesn't get taken away, but it means you can't get scheduled anymore in that role. So we'll put these time windows in that says, I'm making it up, but if you haven't run a register in 6 months, your badge is expired. You've got to retake the training, get revalidated that you can do it, and we'll reinstate the badge. Another example would be, take supply chain, for example. If you're an order caller, you have to hit a certain rate. So once you hit the rate, you're proficient. You get a proficiency badge in order filling for meat and produce. If you go below your rate for a certain period of time, your badge would be suspended until you got back to rate. And so in that instance, you would have to revalidate periodically that you're hitting the rate and the productivity rate that you're supposed to. So lots of different scenarios of where you would want, and there's also, again, like there might be, fresh food safety, you might need to refresh on that once a quarter, once a year, just from a compliance perspective. So yeah, there's lots of different scenarios that you have to ensure people understand, even when and stay proficient in it. Especially like if you change technology, if you're a stocker, or let's say you're a lift driver and you buy new lifts, you've got to get retrained on those new lifts. Until you do, we would suspend your badge, and when you got trained on the new equipment, your badge would get reinstated. Things like that.
Andy, do you envision hiring staff based on their verifiable skills found in learning and employment records like CLR? And can associates take their records with them?
That is 100% our goal. So the answer is yes. We're not there yet. That was the whole purpose of the White House pilot with the American Workforce Advisory Board, was to prove that we could do that. And so absolutely 100% we proved it can be done. What we need to do now is get our own house in order, where every job and every skill is mapped, and we've created an internal record that associates, yes, 100% can take with them, and they can choose to share it or they can choose not to, their choice. And so, yeah, that would be the intent, is that they have clear access and visibility to their skills and take them wherever they want to go.
Okay, do you see the digital ecosystem enabling a stronger relationship with regional education providers?
I think it has to. I go back to the point I made earlier that we believe employees will have to reskill themselves 8 times in their career now. That's a lot. And that means you can't go to college for 4 years 8 times in your career, right? So working with regional education providers to say, how do we start to build curriculum around the skills that are needed and recognizing those skills so we can bring them in and utilize that system. And I think that's where I go back to. It's so important that industry and education align on how that works. Doesn't mean that degrees aren't important, because they are, but what becomes more and more important are the skills that you earn in those degrees. So yeah, it has to be, we have to work with them because we need them. I can't build a system to train everything they need to know. And so we need the education system to do that and be flexible enough to adapt to the skills that we need when we need it versus after the fact, because we won't have time to reskill people after we need it. We've got to be working ahead of them and skilling them for the things they may not know they need yet, but we know that the skills are there.
Okay, we have time for one last question. Do you have any feedback from your associates that involved in testing the pilot that you can share with us?
Yeah, they love it. The visibility, the number one thing we hear about is the visibility to what's required for other roles. It's kind of been this black box in the past of no one's really sure what skills you need, like specific skills you need for a job. And so we've always been, you could look at the job description and it could tell you what you needed to do, but it didn't tell you what you needed to know. And so now this gives them clear visibility to every single role in the store and what skills are needed, what skills you've got, and what skills you need, and access to the content to learn the skills you need. So that's been the biggest feedback we've gotten from all of them, is the visibility to what's required for the next role and the ability to learn that skill before they need it in the job. I think the other is by creating this academy app that we did, now they have all the training they need at the touch of their hands. So if they're on the floor and they forgot how to change a ribbon in a printer, or they forgot exactly how to cut fabric, they can search on this app and get this content that they get back. Watch a 30-second video real quick that says, here's how you cut fabric, and move on. And the customer doesn't get frustrated because they're trying to figure it out, or they're hunting for somebody that does know how. So yeah, we're getting a lot of good feedback on visibility and access to knowledge when and where they need it.
Great. So that's it for the questions, and we're right at time. Andy, I'd like to thank you very much for your presentation today, and it was a really great way to go out strong for the end of this conference. So thanks again, and thank you everyone for being a part of our Digital Credential Summit this week. Take care.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.